Okay, there's a lot of things that we're dealing with today that are, well, things we got to deal with every day, and it depends on who we are. You think Donald Trump worries about where his next meal is going to come from in between now and we get his next paycheck? Do you think worried about ending up on the streets if just one thing goes bad in his life because he's got that much over his head? Let me find a place to put my harmonica. I want to talk today about these statues of racist past, previous crimes. And I want you to think to yourself, let's say Adolf Hitler won. Say he won World War II, and there were statues of him everywhere. That was a good soda pop, and I do apologize for that belch. I am not apologizing for the belch. I'm apologizing if you feel offended about a belch. That's one of them social etiquette things that, hey, just let it out. I mean, I can understand if you got a fart going outside, but at the same time, I'm alone. It's a sound. You don't have to smell a fart over the internet either, do you? And that's the thing about getting offended. What the fuck are you getting offended about? You get offended because I say bitch, or because I say cunt, or because I say Nazi towards a group that you don't want to hear being called a Nazi, or a person you don't want to hear being called a Nazi. But then you get offended the other way around now, don't you? What's acceptable as far as being offended? People say, Sean, you need to pick a cause. I'm like, I did. I picked human rights. That is the cause. That includes Native Americans. That includes black folks. That includes white folks. That includes men, women, children, especially. I also want you to take a look at the Native American communities in most of these places through all of this. I've been looking at a lot of posts from Native Americans, and instead of talking about how racist Black Lives Matter is, instead of trying to take away from Black Lives Matters, they're stepping to the side and also helping to promote it in many cases. Does that mean all of them? No. How would I know? I don't know all of them. I don't see every single Native American's post, read every single one. But what I do know is that a lot of these communities, what we have seen from these communities, they're still fighting their own struggles and they're still fighting their own battles. But they're helping to promote, to help change things for others as well. And that's something that I am not seeing from many of these other so-called communities or groups. When it comes to the police, there's a lot less of them than there is of us. I mean, there are more black people in Washington, D.C. than there is police officers in America. Or is it New York City? But now I have to look that up because I don't want to bullshit you guys unintentionally because I don't remember the place correctly. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The current mission is to save lives, to find solidarity, and to work together. And if we can't agree that black people are getting fucked, or we want to argue because and refuse to fight for our rights because these black folks are fighting for rights that we also have in our best interests if we have them. And although the narrative that it's only happening to black folks is very much what a lot of people are seeing, most black folks are admitting, obviously, that it's not just happening to black people. It's not just happening to Native American people. We do need to work together. A lot of the folks that convinced me that, Sean, I know, I think the name is racist, but fucking, why don't you show up and find out what's going on? And I'm like, you know what? I actually did. Dude, when shit like that happens, it doesn't matter if I have a different understanding or a different belief or a different structure than that. I can see it with my own two eyes when it happens. And the point is, it's not the fact that it was done to them because they were black or because they were white or because they were homeless. It's the fact that it was done to them to begin with. It doesn't matter what reason or what excuse you want to put to it. The issue is what happened to them. If I want to go beat somebody down, or if I do beat somebody down, what happened there is somebody got beat down. What we need to be asking ourselves isn't, hey, are we saying it's okay for a police officer to beat someone up for being black? No. What that's allowing, though, when people turn a blind eye to that happen, is that, well, police can do that for whatever reason they fucking want. And now people are starting to catch on of how fucked up that is. And we've also got a lot of racial stuff that has happened in the past, really helped to grow on and latch onto. But really, they see somebody that's easier to victimize or someone to take their problems out on, and that's what they're going to do. You have no idea how many cops wanted to make jokes and be condescending and laugh and fucking harass and intimidate. I mean, holy shit. It was so bad that other inmates in these places were willing to make police reports, were willing to write stuff down. There was a lot of them who were scared shitless. They're like, I get it 3 fucking days, so promise me you're not going to turn it in until I'm gone because I don't want them to do what they did to the last guy. Well, hold on a second there. Y'all probably ought to hear those stories too, because that's more people who were victimized in the jails by the same guards, and when they tried to turn those situations in, the same shit happened. You guys, no matter what, you want to make excuses. I'm not talking about Black Lives Matters or anyone else. I'm talking about just people. It's something that you don't want happening to you. And if you were in that situation, you'd be scared shitless, but you want to act macho. You ain't fucking tough. Yeah, you're not. Out of all these people who said that they would shoot people under all these different conditions, and I was in these conditions with people and they didn't kill anybody. We're like, I would hunt them down like a dog and put a bullet between their eyes. I'm like, oh, no, you didn't. You absolutely didn't. You fucking folded like a ton of bricks. And then you want to bitch at me for speaking out. All right. Go ahead. I am fighting for our rights. Ours. Human rights. Yes, I can acknowledge that all of this racism stuff is real. Yes, I can acknowledge that these fucked up things are happening to black people, including black people that I know. Just like with missing people that I personally know. And Native Americans that I personally know. Their families, people within their communities. And many of those communities have been my communities. Decent length of time for a caffeine-free soda pop. Apparently it's grape. So the rights that we're fighting for, despite the fact that I don't fit the narrative, I'm not saying what happened was acceptable. And that's the point. A lot of you guys, what you're getting offended by is that you're trying to make comparisons that don't need to be. Those comparisons that reinforce your belief that it's racist. And believe me, I have seen enough cases in the last 10 years where white people are doing exactly the same thing that Black Lives Matters is doing. And they do have a very fucking compelling argument in a lot of these cases. I mean, if you just compare the best case scenario with the worst case scenario, absolutely. If I just look at the stuff that Black Lives Matters has to say, absolutely, this is absolutely hatred towards. But then when I see the white person side, and I'm not talking about individual white people or white people as a group, I'm talking about specifically people who took the time to do this research, and their research is true. They did research many cases where there were white people who didn't get an honest day in court, who didn't get shit, and there was no Black Lives Matters there to speak out for them. There's no public outcry. These people were told, you need to shut up because you're white. And then you look at a comparison between how these people were fucking murdered like dogs, and then you see cases like George Floyd where people actually give a fuck. They go, hey, look at this situation with George Floyd, all right? And then they go, see, this father over here didn't do anything wrong. He's white. He's a father, you should care, right? Well, no, he wasn't taking care of his kids. You know, he was living somewhere else while his kids was with the mama, and as a result, he doesn't matter. Or this guy doesn't have kids who's white. And look at that situation. And each one of these situations where they're comparing it, you know, straight up black to white, it's not just that. There are factors. There isn't any one reason for these things to happen. There is a whole bunch of reasons for these things happening because people make their decisions based upon their opinions and their education. And life experiences, which is their educations and what helps to form their opinions. If you ask a woman who was brought over here from Russia on a boat, and she gets here, and her entire life here in the United States is as a forced underage prostitute sex slave, and then you ask her opinion of Russians, she's probably not Russians very well. What if she was brought from China? Because when it's a Russian person, they go, well, how do you know? How many Russians do you know? You lived in the United States. How do you know all Russians are that way? From her experience, the Russians that she interacted with. But then you say that she's hating on her own people and she's a traitor because she's Russian too. Well, what if she was Chinese? Then you don't get to call her a traitor. Then you have to acknowledge that what was done is wrong. I noticed that many people who I've kept in contact with, they are very much down with protecting and saving people with Black Lives Matters. There's also a lot of white people I know who are doing what, well, because they don't understand, they're not going to have the same opinions that you want them to. And because of the way what situations it's okay and acceptable to ignore. And that's where society and civilization is not civil nor social. Social etiquette, like belching or farting, or how males and females treat each other, what we consider acceptable for one or the other. A lot of our bias and a lot of the people that I know who are racist, they don't even realize they're racist. They just don't know any black people, and what they see on TV is not the truth. And the more they see of all the terrible stuff with black people, all of the terrible stuff that black people do, and that's the narrative that the news tries to paint. Yeah, they're not racist. They're not biased. See, they're working on our side too. Yeah, but they're fucking picking up the bullshit cases for the most part. I mean, there are so many cases that we got to see on camera or officers murder black people and got away with it. And then we've got other ones where police officers were exonerated. And you can find way fucked up situations where human beings were straight up murdered for being broke, being homeless, for basically not having anyone actually in their corner. And they say, look how racist it is that white people can't even, have a group to speak up for our rights. Because the thing is that we endure, and then we have to pretend like the stuff that we're enduring never happened or doesn't matter because we're not the right color. White people need to shut up because of white privilege. You know what? That's like saying, hey, if you get raped in the United States, you shouldn't complain, because if you were in Africa, they'd cut your boobs off and put you in some tires half buried in the ground and light the tires on fire. Now, does that mean that that's absolutely going to happen if you go to Africa? Fuck no. Is it a possibility? Oh, yeah. Yeah, actually, it is. It is. That very same thing could happen to you for being Muslim. It could happen to you for being Christian. It depends on where you're at. But the thing is, that is a terrible excuse for allowing rape in the United States. Oh, you need to shut up and get to the back of the bus because you still have your boobs and they didn't light you on fire inside of it. Are you fucking kidding me? And that is the mentality that white people have. That's the mentality that black people have. All of them? No. Everybody thinks differently. And every time that I say something that is fucking racist and assholeish like that, and it's quote unquote socially acceptable. And that's the fucked up thing, is that it's not okay. When I say things like that, I know exactly who I am pissing the fuck off. The group that I'm having to read the most of that shit from. That's why I target the group. Every time I read an article about how women are treated by men, I've been posting up about that shit. But it's not just women against men or men against women. Wherever we try to create this narrative from our side, no, we need, first of all, we need men to try to understand a woman's perspective. We need a woman to try to understand a man's perspective. If there's a situation where they are having differences of opinion because of gender and sex, like, dude, I really do need 2 days off a month. I really do. All right. I have really bad cramps. You have no idea how difficult that is to handle. I have a history of ovarian cysts. And if I don't do the things that I need to do for my self care, I am going to die. And your insurance is not going to cover. So basically, I'm working for you so that I can do things to my body that are going to be destructive to me in the long run. You know, maternity leave, that's, believe it or not, something that's very important. But the other thing is, I know a lot of women who have very heavy flows. And if you don't know what that is, or you're squeamish because you don't want to hear it, oh my God, dude, I don't want to hear about what about everything that goes with that? All the stuff that you got to run back and forth and do to take care of your own issues. And then they want you to do a bunch of other stuff on top of it. And you are in pain and you're trying to crunch numbers. You're trying to take care of other people's wants, needs, and desires. And yeah, I personally believe that that right there is a special treatment women should be allowed. Oh my God. Oh my God. We can't have that either. Yeah, we can. We totally can. And yeah, I get that some of the little voices that I do are annoying, or some of you might find offense to them. But basically, I'm trying to show you in a way that it'll actually illustrate that I'm not voicing my opinion. In that particular case, I'm trying to put someone else's voice to it to try to impress upon you that that's a lot of the stuff that we're hearing, we're taking. It's pretty fucking hot. I ain't gonna lie. I'm also gonna let y'all go because it's been a pretty decently long ramble, and I do make a lot of these videos. I just heard someone pull up. I did. All right, goodbye, folks. And